picture-perfect wedding or a disaster waiting to happen? He thought he had found the love of his life, but one quiet evening, a casual conversation revealed everything. What happens when secrets unravel just weeks before the big day? Before continuing the story, tell me which city you're watching from. I want to know how far this video has come. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so I can send you exciting stories like this every day. I'm getting married in 2 weeks and I'm totally screwed. I literally need to get this off my chest. I feel like I'm going insane. My fiancée, Jessica, 28 female, and me, 34 male, have known each other for about 6 years, engaged for 1. Our wedding is scheduled to take place in just 2 weeks, and I just witnessed something that is making me feel like I'm making the biggest mistake of my life. Tonight, Jessica and I were taking a rare opportunity to relax at home. Jessica was in the kitchen making dinner, while I was out back working on one of my projects. We live on acreage, and I am building a pagoda fire pit in the backyard that we are planning on using this fall. Anyway, as you do when you're doing heavy labor, I get thirsty and come back to the house to get a drink, where I see Jessica at the counter preparing dinner and talking on speakerphone. I recognize the voice instantly as my brother-in-law, Andrew. Now this is where my brain gets totally twisted. Andrew asked Jessica where her sister, Lauren, is, as he's been trying to get in contact with her, and she's not answering texts, and I hear Jessica say to him, "She just left here. She should be home in half an hour or so." It should be noted that Lauren is Andrew's wife of 5 years. I have to admit that I didn't immediately register what she had just said because I went into the kitchen and grabbed a glass and asked Jessica, "What was that all about?" And she responds with, "Andrew was looking for Evie." I see her texting and I ask her, "What are you doing?" And she says, "I'm texting Evie that Andrew was looking for her." Anyway, I pour myself a drink, sit down, have a sip, and then finally my brain starts to work. First off, I heard Jessica tell Andrew that Lauren was here. Lauren was not here, and the last time we saw her was yesterday when she came over to work on some last-minute wedding decoration stuff with Jessica. Secondly, why is she texting Lauren and expecting a response when I distinctly heard Andrew that Lauren wasn't answering her texts? Lastly, why the hell would she tell Andrew that Lauren should be back in 30 minutes unless she either knows where she is? Then why did she lie? Or she is right now in front of me texting her to tell her to get her butt home quickly. The only conclusion that I came up with is that Jessica is lying to Andrew about the whereabouts of her sister, his wife, and is probably warning Evie that Andrew will expect her home in half an hour. I then spent probably the next 5 hours concocting various explanations for this behavior. Some decent, some downright horrible, and playing them back in my head. I wanted really badly to ask Jessica about this, but at the same time, if what I think is going on, then I doubted I'd get a straight answer. Which brings me to about an hour ago. I woke up around 1 a.m. to use the toilet, and I couldn't resist the urge to check Jessica's phone. We both know each other's pins, so this wasn't a difficult thing to do. Anyway, I grabbed the phone, retreated to the bathroom, and unlocked it. And yup, it was exactly what I was afraid of, and probably what most of you were expecting. Jessica's sister, Lauren, has been having an affair for about 6 months with a coworker, and Jessica has been helping Lauren cover it up for almost that entire time. There are literally hundreds of texts between them discussing it, discussing the coworker, discussing sex stuff, really embarrassing things about my brother-in-law, and probably uncharitable, just stuff that makes my stomach churn. And here's my soon-to-be wife going along with all of it without batting an eye. I took some screenshots of the entire thread, put the phone back where I found it, then retreated to my home office to find myself here typing it all out on Reddit, simply so I can avoid the primal scream that wants to come out of my mouth right now. I am totally 100% screwed. Reddit, I cannot marry Jessica. I just cannot do it. I can't think of any reasonable excuse she could offer me about assisting her sister in this affair and victimizing not only Andrew, but their 2-year-old daughter as well. On the other hand, myself, my family, Jessica, and her family have all sunk an enormous amount of money into a wedding that is supposed to happen in around 2 weeks. There's no way we are getting any of that money back. On top of that, I feel like an absolute fool. Like, how did I not know this woman was like this? And what the hell am I going to do? I can't marry her. I absolutely cannot. However, I still want to. She's beautiful and fun and kind, and I thought we had a bright future ahead of us. She's never done anything wrong to me, but I just can't see her the same now. It's like a big black stain on an otherwise beautiful picture. I just don't know how the FBI got this so wrong, and I'm absolutely dreading what I know I need to do. I feel like I want to vomit or break something. Edit. Guys, you don't need to convince me to not marry Jessica. That's obvious. The wedding is off. I'm just trying to figure out my next steps and work up the nerve to do it. There's an incredible amount of pressure on me from the expectations of everyone, but I'm not going to buckle under it. I am just not relishing having to deal with the fallout, and I'm more than a little angry that I'm in this situation. Edit 2, it's 5 a.m. I have to work in 3 hours and I'm running off a couple hours of sleep. I'm going to take a shower and head into work a little early to avoid Jessica and stew on this. Thanks to the support of people here, and big raspberry to the dill holes who keep saying I should figure out whatever good reason my soon-to-be ex-fiancée had for this garbage. Edit 3, I got into work around 7. No one was in the office, so I decided to start pulling off the Band-Aid, and I called my brother. He lives in Australia, so he was still up and having just put his kids to bed. It was heartbreaking the news to him about this because I know he had laid out a huge amount of money for flights for him and his family to come. But to his credit as an older brother, he didn't mention at one time and just backed me up. He made a great point too. He said, totally paraphrasing, "You work in a job where you have to deal with liars and scammers day in and day out. I don't blame you for wanting to have someone to go where this isn't a concern." He was totally right about that, and I get now why I'm reacting so strongly to Jessica's participation in this deceit. He also has a great idea. He's going to take his family down to Florida to do some sightseeing and visit the parks. Well, now the kids will be accompanied by their uncle as well. It should be easy since we were going to honeymoon there as well, and we were planning on meeting them for a bit anyway. I'll just rebook everything to be closer to him and his family, and I'll offer Jessica's ticket to either my sister or another family member. I haven't had time to read everyone's comments, but I have answered a few. Right now, I'm just sort of making myself sick by drinking cup after cup of coffee and trying to distract myself until the day gets on enough where I can reach out to Andrew. Edit 4. Just did morning stand-up. My stomach is doing flip-flops from drinking about 2 pots of coffee since I got here so early, and I absolutely cannot focus and concentrate. I feel like I can't do anything really from my side until I tell Andrew what I know. So I'm just going to take a sick day and drive over to his house and see if he's around. If not, I'll call him and track him down. Andrew is a teacher who is on break right now, and Lauren works a 9 to 5 like me. So odds are good this works out. Wish me luck. Reddit, Edit 5. Got to Andrew's house a little after 10 a.m. He had just put his daughter down for a nap, and we had a long, frankly brutal talk in the kitchen. Basically, he suspected this for a couple of months now, but Lauren has been very good at covering her tracks. Obviously with the assistance of Jessica and a couple of their mutual friends. I unfortunately do not have all 6 months of text messages. Just a couple of dozen screenshots I sent to myself from Jessica's phone, but I gave him what I have and offered to help him however I could. I am a field analyst in the SIU department of a mid-sized insurer specializing in workers' compensation fraud. So I know a few things and a few people. Anyway, I'm now working from my laptop in my almost brother-in-law's kitchen, trying to salvage whatever I can. I'm going to have to talk to Jessica this evening and get the word out as fast as I can to my friends and family now that I know I won't screw Andrew over. So far, I managed to rebook most of the honeymoon, although I had a problem with the ticket because Jessica was flying under her maiden name and her carrier has a surname rule for name changes. Anyway, they did allow me to cancel and get a partial refund and rebook to my sister, who will be accompanying her 2 brothers and nieces to Florida in a couple of weeks. I'm holding off on canceling the venues until after I talk to Jessica because I don't want to tip anyone off until Andrew gets his chance to confront Lauren, but I will absolutely be letting my family and friends know this afternoon sometime and beg them to keep it close. I'm basically in a frenzy right now, canceling stuff. I can cancel, and I'm heading down to the bank in a few to open a new account and getting my bills and pay sorted out. The finances. Some people have mentioned them, but it should be pretty good. The mortgage is in my name since we were not married, and I have the bigger income, but Jessica did contribute about $20K versus my $60K towards the down payment. I will have to probably pay her out that money and some portion of the mortgage payments for the last 16 months, but it could be worse. P.S. How come so many are confused regarding brother and brother-in-law? Edit 6. I'm going to go silent for a while. This post has already been circulating around TikTok and has gone way, way, way beyond what I thought it ever would when I was freaking out in the middle of the night. First off, I want to say something here. I do not hate Jessica. I don't approve of what she did. I frankly find it repulsive, and I'm shocked by uncovering how two-faced she can be and how she treats people, but I don't hate her. I'm just incredibly sad about everything, and that I'm screwed part of my post is really the short time frame I have to work under. Basically, our relationship is in a state where I cannot get married to her, but we're supposed to get married in 2 weeks. Maybe if we had 2 months, or better yet, a year or so to work through this, my approach might be vastly different, but I don't have that luxury. I have to move now. There's just no way I can enter into marriage with the state of our relationship is in now, so I'm not going to. End of discussion, guys. Anyway, I will report back later tonight with how everything today went. Hopefully it will be less traumatic than I am anticipating. Edit 7. I have no idea how long a Reddit post can be, as I've never written such a long one before in my life, so I hope that this goes through. It's about 8:30 p.m. right now, and I'm writing this from my buddy's house. His name is David, and a former coworker of mine that is also in the same field of work. As I mentioned in a previous update, I work as a field analyst in this SIU department of a decent-sized insurance carrier. For people who don't know what that is, I'm basically a private detective. My job is to investigate what we think might be fraudulent claims in regards to workers' compensation. Anyway, as I kind of hinted at, Andrew asked for my help in finding out who the other guy was that Lauren was cheating on him with. All we had to go on was a name. Let's call him Brian. The first thing I did was not some major amount of sleuthing. It was basically just going through LinkedIn trying to find the guy through Lauren's connections, but that brought up nothing, which I thought was strange. Andrew had told me that Lauren was supposed to go out for drinks tonight after work and that she said she wouldn't be home until around 9 or 10. He didn't have to tell me what he suspected since I pretty much understood right away. I told him that I would help him, but he needed to come with me. I then contacted my buddy David, explained the situation to him, and had him agree to meet us later in the day. The first thing we did was drive over to Andrew's parents' house so that they could watch their granddaughter. I don't know what Andrew told him as I waited in the car. After that, we went to Lauren's place of work. It's one of those large commercial strip mall type centers with all of these nondescript offices in a row in a large non-gated car park. We drove around until we found Lauren's car, and then I had Andrew unlock it with a second set of keys. I then gave Andrew a voice activator recorder and a GPS tracker to place in the car. Once done with that, we left, parked a bit down the street and waited for my friend to arrive and for Lauren to leave the business. David shows up around 20 minutes later, hops in the car with us, and around an hour after that, Lauren comes out of her office with 2 of her girlfriends and a tall, younger-looking man with sandy blonde hair. They are obviously holding hands, and I'm like, dang, Lauren, you're making it easy for me. I take a couple of pictures from the cam and then wait for Lauren to leave in hers, and I start tracking her. At first, I thought she might go right to a hotel or something, but she didn't. Instead, she drove to a reasonably nice bar and grill in a section of town and parked on the street. I drove by her as she was getting out of her car and entering the establishment, and then found my own parking spot and went over the plan. First, we sent David in since no one knew him. He had basically 2 jobs. First, try to get any compromising pictures he could of Lauren and Brian, and second, to be my alibi. Andrew and I waited in the car for around 20 minutes until I got the first in the series of text messages from David. They were pictures of Lauren and Brian making out in front of their 2 female coworkers. Andrew's suspicions were right. They were helping Lauren hide their affair from him. He was obviously very upset and angry. Evidently, one of the coworkers is married, and as a couple, they are good friends with Andrew and Lauren, both of them having toddlers around the same age. I ask Andrew if that's enough for him, but he says he still really wants to know who this guy is. I try to tell him that we can find that out later, but he's practically begging me at this point, so I tell him to wait. Text David that I'm coming in and then enter the bar myself. First thing I see is Lauren and her crew laughing and drinking at one of those tall, round tables near the front window as I enter. I stop for a moment, pretend to be surprised, and then call out to Lauren. "Lauren, hi! What are you doing here?" She's obviously shocked to see me, and everyone around her tenses up immediately. Lauren quickly introduces me as her sister's fiancé and says that we are getting married in 2 weeks. There are a lot of congratulations from everyone. I thank them and then stick out my hand to the blonde guy and introduce myself with my full name, hoping that he'll respond in kind. He does, and I'm a bit taken aback. He's not named Brian. I introduce myself to everyone else and then tell Lauren that I'm here to meet a coworker. I wave to David and then excuse myself. Once I get over to David, I tell him the guy's name and we both move out our phones and go to work. It doesn't take long for us to find him. He's got social media profiles and a couple of court case judgments against him. Everything sort of falls into place and we find out that Brian is his middle name. At this point, I'm basically just grateful that Lauren isn't cheating on Andrew with 2 different coworkers. Turns out that Brian is 26, married, and has a 1-year-old daughter. This just keeps getting better or worse. Anyway, I text Andrew the guy's name and I decide I want to push my luck and tell him to wait a few more minutes. Basically, I'm playing babysitter here at the bar. I'm totally visible to Lauren and her crew. I can see out of the corner of my eye that no one is particularly happy about this, and my presence is really ruining the night. This is good. I let this go on for about 10 minutes and then tell Andrew to text Lauren that he's spending the night at his parents' house with their daughter. It doesn't take long after that until I catch Lauren taking out her phone, showing it to Brian, and then everyone deciding to pack up. Lauren comes over to me, says goodnight, and asks me if Jessica and I want to come over for dinner this weekend. I smile and say that sounds like a great idea and wish her and her coworkers a good night. David and I wait for them to leave, then pay our bill and hurry back to the waiting Andrew. There's a bit of hesitation here because we don't know exactly what Lauren was going to do. Like I half assumed she might have already booked a hotel room and was heading there, which would have made everything a lot more complicated and limited what I could do. But it turns out that night was probably meant to be just drinks at the bar, and it wasn't until Andrew decided to spend the night at his parents' that it turned into something more. Lauren made a beeline for home, and we followed behind her way out of sight and parked on the street. It didn't take long after that until another car pulled into Andrew's driveway, and we saw Brian get out, go up to the door, knock, and be greeted by Lauren. They went inside together. Now at this point, it's about 7:30, and I have my own stuff to do tonight, and I think that as a friend, I've done pretty much all I can do for Andrew, and he can handle the rest himself. I mean, I feel bad for the guy, but I definitely don't want to get any more involved in this drama than I already am. And being the wingman for him while he confronts his cheating wife is a bit much for me considering my situation. Andrew says it's fine that he'll do the rest of it himself. Guess he's more of a man than you thought, Lauren. He goes to Lauren's car, retrieves my gear, and we bid each other goodbye. That was almost 2 hours ago. I did get one text message from Andrew saying it was done and he was going to his parents' house. For real this time, but my phone hasn't been blowing up, so I don't know what's been going on with Lauren, and I've been at David's since then. I think that basically concludes my part in Andrew's story. If he was smart and listened to my advice, he was recording with his phone when he entered the house. I'll find out later. Anyway, my biggest priority now is to head home and tell Jessica that the wedding is off. She's almost 100% going to take it badly. There's no way she won't, but like I said, I just can't get married to her right now. I don't know what the future holds for us or if we will be done with each other or not, but definitely we are not getting married anytime soon. Also, for people who keep saying, why didn't you talk to her first? Why don't you confront her? I have to say, are you people stupid? She stone cold lied in front of me to her brother-in-law that she has known for about 10 years and purportedly thinks he is a really great husband and father. Maybe you are naive enough to think that someone can lie that coldly to someone they are supposed to care about and then tell you the truth. But I'm not wired that way. Until that moment, I never had cause to ever second-guess Jessica or not trust her. But she was literally untrustworthy in front of my face, and I'm supposed to let it slide or expect her to be honest to me? I guess you don't know what it's like to have your entire view of someone shift in an instant. It's disorienting and, frankly, a bit panic-inducing. I'm actually impressed I kept my head and followed my instincts instead of pressing her right away because it led me to the truth. It would have been ridiculously easy for her to lie to me and then delete those text messages. And if she had done that, then I would never have read the horrible things she said, never seen how she can be so duplicitous and two-faced, and never realized how little I actually know about her. I'm going home to talk to Jessica. I'll update later to let everyone know what the final verdict is. Don't expect it to be a good one. Edit 8. Well, I had the talk with Jessica last night. It was pretty insane. I'm honestly burnt out and still exhausted, even though I took another sick day and slept until almost 11:15. Sleep deficit is real. I know everyone is thirsty for updates, but as much as it's therapy for me to write them, I am just absolutely drained. And as you may have noticed, I don't know how to be short. Just call it a character trait from my profession and the endless amounts of minutia-filled reports I've written. I will give the TLDR, and I promise to do a proper update later. Long story short, I came home to talk to Jessica about canceling the wedding and found her comforting Lauren on the couch. I almost turned around and walked out, but didn't. Words were exchanged, tears were had, people got really angry and the cops were called. I collapsed and slept for like 10 hours and my phone is practically glowing from the heat of a bajillion unread messages and missed calls. If it vibrates anymore, I'm going to take it to Lauren's office and charge $10 a minute to sit on it. Stuff is really up in the air. I have a lot to do today. My family already knew what was going on by yesterday afternoon, but I need to contact some friends today and get a move on other things. I'm just going to answer a couple and then bug out for a few to get stuff done. First, I'm not James Bond. I'm the guy that follows around the disabled construction worker to his Zumba class or skydiving lesson. I've been doing it for about 5 years and I'm pretty good at it. Nothing I did went beyond a $50 GPS you can buy from Amazon and a tiny bit of social engineering. You might be surprised how far social engineering can get you, but whatever. Second, I'm off the clock on the mysterious case of Andrew and the Hobag Hobgoblin. Whatever Andrew does with the info he has, including contacting the other wife, is on him. I'm not interjecting myself into this mess any more than I have. Andrew's a good friend, but I have my own little world collapsing right now, and now that I don't have my moral indignation to distract me, it's becoming a bigger burden than I have been letting on. Third, I'm not an aspiring screenwriter or novelist. I do, however, write a lot of reports. You have no idea. Most of my life is actually spent hunched over a laptop writing a report or transcribing statements. For about every hour I spend doing fieldwork, I probably spend 10 doing paperwork or research. Fourth, you are right that I was wrong to leave Andrew to go it alone. I didn't have any fear, not even an iota, that Andrew would do anything stupid, but I didn't properly take into account the risk for him. That's a personal failing of mine. It's not that I don't care. I just tend to estimate that other people handle things like I do, and hence Andrew was doing something that I would do, so I didn't question it like I should have. I know this is a problem of mine and I'm working on it, but I am also not in the best place emotionally, so my EQ was low in this situation. Last, people saying, you don't know the whole situation. What if Andrew was an abuser? Yada, yada, yada. No, buddy, you don't know the whole situation. I do. I read 6 months of text messages. I know why Lauren did what she did. I know how she feels about Andrew. I know how my ex-fiancée played along with this. I'm just not sharing it because it's vile. But I know, and it played a big part in how I have acted in the last day and a half. Trust me, if Jessica had done something, anything other than encouraging and egging on Lauren, we'd all probably not be here. But she did, so we are. Anyway, that's it from me. I will try to update again in the next few days with the whole fallout, but I am probably going to be mostly off Reddit for now. Best of luck to everyone, and thank you to all the people backing me up. It meant a lot to me and helped keep me sane. Well, some semblance of sane anyway. Edit 9. I tried posting an update to this subreddit under a new post because it's freaking huge, but Automod keeps eating it. Unless the mods decide to recover the post, you can just check out my user profile for the next part of this messed up saga. Before we do that, let's check in with some comments from the community. First one says, well, on the bright side, the impending divorce between Andrew and Lauren will eventually take the spotlight off the canceled wedding. Another person has an idea. Turn the wedding into a single Andrew party. Another person says, single Andrew and OP party. The next comment says, a broception. Another one, that's a fabulous idea since OP probably can't cancel this late and it's already paid for. OP should do it for himself and Andrew 100%. Another comment says, brother, trust your principles and your gut. I would never be able to look at that person again if they did something like this. As for the money, screw it. Money can always be won and lost through life. But making a mistake of this magnitude will have far, far more severe consequences for you in the future. Integrity is everything. One more comment says, the money you lose in the wedding is far less than what you would lose long-term being with her. Very bluntly, take the loss as an investment to a future that does not involve a cheater, because that's what your hopefully ex-fiancée is by helping her sister cheat. She's also cheated you and your brother-in-law's family. If she's happy to help someone cheat, then she can also cheat, because to her, it's not a big deal. To her, she's doing nothing wrong. Kindness would have been slapping her sister over the head, telling her to leave rather than cheat if she was unhappy, or encouraging her to fix the relationship. Kindness is not covering and helping someone have an affair. I think there's some valid points made here, OP. If you look into a person's eyes and you can't recognize them anymore, it changes everything. And you were expected to look into the stranger's eyes and make a life-changing vow. That's big. It's not to be taken lightly. How can you marry someone you don't even know? And it raises a lot of questions and uncertainties. What has Lauren covered up for Jessica? I'm sorry, this is not how you expected the weeks up to your wedding to go down. Update 5 days later. I tried posting this to r/true off my chest, but the automod removed it. No idea why. So good thing I saved this to Notepad. Hi, it's me again. I want to thank everyone who has sent me kind messages and support here on Reddit and even on other platforms. This has really blown up, and frankly, it's totally bizarre to see my life plastered all over the internet. But it's also nice to see so many people seeming to be genuinely concerned for me. It helps a lot. At first, I had a bit of trepidation about how visible this became. Like, what have I done? But since this past weekend, I decided to just roll with it. After all, the cat is already out of the bag, and I really believe I've done nothing wrong here, despite a small minority of commentators saying otherwise. I guess there's a lot to go over, and so much has happened. Most of it, if I'm honest, hasn't been that great. Well, it's actually been downright crappy, but I'll get to that. For people who are just following along, the link to my original post is here. I'm getting married in 2 weeks, and I'm totally screwed. First off, I left David's house pretty late that night. Jessica already knew I was out discussing business with him, although she had no idea that the business was actually her sister's affair. But still, it was getting to an unreasonable hour, mostly because I was trying to get up the nerve to go home and face her. After about 2 or 3 pep talks from David, I finally got off my keister and texted Jessica I was coming home and left in my car. As I said in the last update, I was pretty surprised when I got there, because when I walked into the house, Lauren was crying on the couch with Jessica. I hadn't seen Lauren's car on the driveway when I came home, so this was probably the last thing I was expecting. I froze for a moment and almost turned around and left. This was not how I imagined this going down, and I knew that Lauren's presence was going to make a bad situation a million times worse. Still, I had a timetable that I wanted to move on. I had friends I needed to notify, and wedding preparations to cancel, and the proverbial clock was ticking in the back of my head. When I entered the room, both Jessica and Lauren looked up at me in acknowledgement, but the tirade of accusations never came. I just stared back, raising my eyes in question. The moment passed and Lauren went back to crying, Jessica back to comforting, and I let it awkwardly hang in the air for half a minute while I thought. It seemed that Andrew hadn't mentioned my assistance in the uncovering of Lauren's affair. I decided to play dumb, not for any reason other than I wanted to see how Jessica reacted. I took a seat on a recliner, put down my laptop bag, and took my phone out of her pocket. I made it look like I was fidgeting with it and then asked them, "What's going on?" Lauren just continued to cry, but Jessica looked at me and said, "Andrew is divorcing Evie." Well, yes, I figured as much. I decided to push ahead with the obvious question. "What for?" I asked her. Jessica stopped patting Lauren's back for a moment and looked at me. I could almost see her face twist and contort. Imagine the look a 5-year-old makes when you tell them to eat their broccoli or finish their lime beans. Lauren shot Jessica a look that I didn't need to be a sister to understand, and there was a pregnant pause until Jessica finally said, "She cheated on him." Now, I have to admit, this response freaking floored me. This was absolutely not what I was expecting. Sure, the more cynical readers here might think, well, the cat was out of the bag, so there's no point in hiding it. And yes, that's true, but it's also true that she could just have as easily feigned ignorance or even worded it another way, like Andrew accused Eve of cheating, instead of basically confirming it to my face. Maybe I'm being pedantic here, but it's part of my job to pay attention to not only what people say, but how they say it. Lauren wasn't happy about this. She kind of crumpled into the couch a bit and did this strange combination of a sigh and sob at the same time. I wanted to press on, go for the gold, to sort of speak, but I must have stammered a bit. Jessica probably interpreted it as shock, and well, she would have been right in a sense, just not how she assumed. "Did you know?" Jessica didn't say anything. She just nodded, her hand still rubbing her sister's shoulder. I didn't hesitate and asked for the obvious follow-up. "How long?" The answer came back a lot easier than I thought it would. 6 months. I was shocked by how easily she admitted to it. Lauren was shocked as well. She smacked her sister's hand off of her, and I think even Jessica was a little shocked at saying it out loud. I leaned back in the recliner and rubbed my face. Time to tug the rest of the Band-Aid, clear off. We're not getting married. There were 2 looks, like stunned goats, and a chorus of, "Huh, what?" from both sisters. I stood up and repeated myself. We're not getting married. I can't marry someone who would cover up adultery, especially not for 6 months. Jessica sprang off the couch and opened her arms. The body language was, "You can't be serious," but I just put my hands in front of myself. "I'm serious. I don't like this, not one bit. I don't like that you took part in this, and I can't get married to you with how I feel. It would be a mistake." The waterworks started immediately, and Lauren did that thing with her mouth that looks like a perch trying to suck air. There were wails from Jessica, accusations of not loving her, appeals to my sense of duty, to the loss of money, the inconvenience to all of our friends, the embarrassment of it all. It was frankly nothing I hadn't already thought about, but it definitely felt different hearing Jessica say it through body-racking sobs. It was at this point I probably made a big mistake. Well, maybe not, because I have no idea how long Andrew would have kept my involvement in everything off the books. But in an effort to convince Jessica of the finality of it all, I said, "Look, I already canceled the honeymoon. It's not happening." I knew it was a bomb the second it left my mouth, and the explosion was damn near immediate. Lauren, to her credit, had always been pretty quick on the uptake, which is probably how she had managed to fool her husband for so long. I could almost see the realization dawning on her when she put it all together with my appearance at the bar earlier in the evening. She screamed, "You son of a bitch," and flew across the room at me. Now, I'm not a huge guy, but I'm no slouch either. But the force that Lauren flung herself at me had me staggering backwards, and I barely had enough time to get my hands up before she started raking my face with her fingernails. I almost lost the phone I still had in my hand, but still managed to push her away and say very loudly, "Lauren, get off of me. Jessica, get your sister under control." Lauren made another lunge for me, but surprisingly, Jessica did exactly what I asked her to and wrapped her arms around her sister's waist and held her in place. I looked at Lauren and yelled, "Get out of here right now or I'm calling the police," holding my phone up for emphasis. Jessica asked both of us to calm down and said to me, "OP, she doesn't have anywhere to go right now," and Andrew took her car keys. That explained the lack of car in the driveway, but I didn't care. I was 100% through with Lauren, and I was going to make sure she knew it. I marched into my home office and locked the door and dialed the popo. I told him I had been attacked by my fiancée's sister and had locked myself in my office, that I was bleeding from my face. Lauren had scratched me pretty good along the end of my left eye, and that my vision was blurry and I feared for my life. I even told him that I had recorded the entire altercation on my phone. Just as I was finishing up my conversation, Jessica comes knocking on the door. "OP, please come out. We need to talk about this. And please, I love you. Don't do this. We don't need to do this." And even Lauren is sorry. She wants to apologize. I'm pretty sure that last one was a lie, but Jessica was obviously losing her crap. I didn't answer her, and her attempts to cajole me out of the office ended. Probably right when the police rocked up to our front door. I could hear Jessica talking to them, and I decided to come out. The cops were two males. One of them looked younger than me, maybe around Jessica's age, and the other one looked older and more annoyed about life in general. I introduced myself, pointed at Lauren, stating that she attacked me, and offered to show the cops the recording I made. The younger one asked me if I wanted to press charges. I said yes. He asked me again if I wanted to press charges. I said yes again. At this point, both cops looked at each other, and before the young cop could open his mouth again, I said, yes, dang it. I want to press charges. I have video evidence, and this is going to court, or else I'm going to call up your boss. I dropped his name here and asked him to come down and do it himself. I think they were pretty surprised that I knew his name. Not that we are friends or anything, but given my line of work, I spend plenty of time interfacing with local law enforcement, and I have met most of the brass or talked to them on the phone a couple of times in the last few years. Honestly, at this point, I was getting pretty hot under the collar, and while I get what these guys were thinking, I don't agree with it at all. Facts are facts. Sure, I might not be bleeding out on the floor, but Lauren assaulted me in my own home, and I wanted her gone. Thankfully, the situation didn't immediately escalate, and the two officers handcuffed Lauren and put her in the back of the patrol car. She was squealing and crying like some sort of gibbering maniac the entire time. Jessica wasn't much better. She just kept going, no, please, no, over and over again. At this point, the younger cop circled back and asked us if everything was okay here. I just told him I was going to bed. He asked Jessica again, and she didn't immediately answer, so he goes, is everything okay here, ma'am? It was clear what he was fishing for. At this point, I really disliked the guy, but I bit my lip. Jessica finally realized that the cop was addressing her, and she just nodded at him. Obviously, the guy was not satisfied with this and starts to ask her again, at which point I interjected and say, if you want to go on a fishing expedition, you might want to do it over there on the lawn where my doorbell camera isn't recording you. I think at this point, I had pushed my luck with this guy one too many times. But what could I do? I think I was probably about 30 seconds from getting the cuffs slapped on me until his partner came up and basically pulled him away. He was an older man, probably in his late 50s, and probably didn't want to process two arrests right at the beginning of his shift, especially when one of them was obviously going to be more trouble than it was worth. I'm pretty sure he talked him out of it, and they left, carrying Lauren away, and hopefully out of my life forever. At this point, I'm thinking about if I want to stay here or not. The fact that my parents live a couple of hours away, combined with the thought of how poor I am going to be in the short term here, ruled out either their place or a hotel, so I just decided to sleep in the guest room. Jessica made some futile efforts to get me to engage with her in conversation or to sleep in our bed, but I just told her we'd talk tomorrow and that I was tired and didn't want to be disturbed. Thankfully, she let me be, and I crashed hard, harder than I had in years, which pretty much brings us up to speed to the update. But dear friends of Reddit, let me tell you this, the next day was by far the weirdest effing day of my life. To start with, I woke up at 11 a.m. Jessica was still home. She had cleaned the house from top to bottom. I mean, the floors sparkled, the toilet shined. I could lick the linoleum in the bathroom and it'd probably be minty fresh. She had obviously been busy, but when she saw me, she sort of hovered out of immediate range. Not quite engaging, but looked like she wanted to say something. I get it. Last night was traumatic for everyone, and she was probably uncertain. Like, did I just cancel the wedding in the heat of the moment? Was I serious about this? Was I really angry? I took a deep breath and told her we needed to finish talking. She tried to sit next to me on the couch, and I thought about rebuffing her, but I didn't. We were not getting married, but I didn't need to act like a hater, because truthfully, I didn't. I was disappointed in her, decently disgusted by some of the things I had read in her text exchanges between her sister. But we were both hurting here, and I didn't want to make it any worse, or escalate things to a point where life could get any more complicated than it already was. It took some more convincing on my part for Jessica to truly and fully believe the wedding was off. She was not taking it well. Hell, that's an understatement. She was a wreck. I think she was hyperventilating a few times. I was holding it together better, But obviously, not only was this my idea, I had also had longer to come to terms with it. Finally, she asked a serious question. What about us? I know I'm going to get a lot of hate from people for this, especially the kind of Redditors that think every infraction in a relationship is grounds for nuking it from orbit. And indeed, one could even say that my calling off the wedding was like dropping a Moab on our 6-year partnership. But truthfully, I didn't have an answer for Jessica at that moment. I just didn't know, and I told her so. I said I read all those text messages, and it showed me a side of her that I didn't know existed, and that I wasn't certain about her and our relationship anymore. I said I couldn't understand why she would go along with Lauren putting down Andrew and joining in, and even egging her on and cheating on not only him, but their daughter too. She just kept saying, I know, it was wrong, I know. I asked her for an explanation, but she couldn't provide one. She just said that she got carried away and that she had to choose her sister. I told her that I thought a good sister was someone who kept you on the straight and narrow and didn't give you a free pass to be a douchebag. She agreed with me and said that she would do better, but that Lauren had always been the boss when they were kids, and she was always a follower. I get this. I have an older sibling too, and while I'm a bit more independent, I also spent the last 18 years of my life with him living on the other side of the planet. Except for the odd occasional visit around Thanksgiving or Christmas. But still, maybe I had a leg up on Jessica because my older sibling was a decent guy while Lauren was a piece of trash. Now here's where I get the second major effing shock of my life in like 48 hours. Jessica says to me, it's not fair. What's not fair, I ask her. You were sexing that bimbo wife Sophia girl on Instagram last year, and I got over it. I was so hurt, but I got over it. Why can't you get over this? Why? Huh? What? What the hell is she talking about? Who is this bimbo wife Sophia? Like I have no effing clue. I ask her if she was high or having a psychotic break. Like, okay, that was mean of me, but I have absolutely not been doing cyber sex or sexting or whatever with anyone, especially not some Instagram girl. I'm protesting pretty loudly at this point, and Jessica is yelling at me through her tears, telling me that she saw the messages last year and that she decided to not confront me because I had stopped it. Evidently, she had been checking my socials from my home computer when I am at work, which should have been really boring because I have only family and a couple of work friends on there. I try to make the case to her, offering to let her log into all my accounts and check for herself, but she's just calling me a liar and a pervert and all sorts of crap. She starts throwing stuff at me, and so things are getting out of hand, and I tell her that if she throws one more thing, I'll have her taken out of this house just like her sister. She swears at me and stomps off to the master bedroom and slams the door. Now at this point, I'm so dang confused I barely know what to think. I head into my office, fire up my desktop, and type bimbo wife Mandy into Google. Sure enough, there is an Instagram, a Twitter, a Reddit even, and of course, an OnlyFans. I click on one of the Instagram links, and up comes a post of an extremely busty woman, like clearly pushing the limits of science and technology. And oh, guess where she's from? Australia. Well, everyone, remember all this nice stuff I was saying about my brother? Guess who was staying with us last Christmas all the way from Australia? Guess who I told, sure, go ahead and use my office computer to play games if you have jet lag. As far as I can tell, my brother, after his wife and kids went to sleep, logged into either Insta or OnlyFans or something and was probably paying money to sex with this girl. What a great effing guy. Now, I would love to call my brother and not only confirm my suspicions, but also give him a gosh darn earful. But it's like 2 or 3 in the morning there, so it's going to have to wait. But I'm crawling the walls here trying to sort out how I feel about everything. I feel totally let down by everyone. I think to myself, dang, what is this world coming to? For a brief moment, I try to connect the dots between whatever the hell Jessica saw my brother do and what she'd do with Lauren. But try as I might, it doesn't really come together. Maybe she's a more tolerant or forgiving person than I am, which is why she didn't confront me when she saw this, but I wish she had. It would have given me an opportunity to directly tell her my whole personal stance on these things and to even show her how I would act. It might even have influenced her in a good way later on, or maybe it wouldn't have mattered. I don't know. All I know is that this post is becoming a novel, and I have blown off most of the morning when I should be working to get this out of my head and onto this page. I feel better for doing it, but there is still probably another 2 or 3 posts left to tell. I'm not going to post them to this subreddit anymore. I'm not sure that they'd let me, but I will try to quietly update my profile in the next day or 2 with the rest of this blowout, talking to my brother, talking to my parents and Jessica's parents, and finally where Jessica and I stand. One thing that I can say, however, is that it seems like most of my immediate family relationships are incredibly strained for various reasons. My parents are largely supportive, but that's becoming less so now that the reality of the financial loss is setting in. Yes, the marriage is still off. That was pretty much a certainty from the get-go. Jessica's parents are a bit more pissed, and I'm sure they are sticking pins in voodoo dolls crafted in my image right now. Lauren, for people who are wondering, is no longer in jail. She got Jessica to bail her out, and I even laid into Jessica for that, calling her her sister's underling, which I think actually struck a chord with her because she wrote me like a 20-page letter about how her sister always bossed her around throughout her entire childhood. I read it twice now, and I wish we had talked about this pretty much any time within the last 6 years. Maybe things would be different, I don't know. Anyway, Reddit, if anyone is still interested, expect a final chapter of this saga in like a day or 2, and maybe a follow-up after the former wedding date passes. Oh boy, this is where communication comes in handy. If she had just talked to you about what she saw, yes, admitting that she snooped on you, do you think she would still have helped out her sister? Do you think she helped her sister just because she thought she caught you cheating? What an absolute frenzy of miscommunication. I hope you gave your brother an earful, just as you did to Jessica. Only fair. Do you look at your brother differently, OP? Update. This update has taken longer to get around to than I had originally intended. A lot of things happened over the last couple of days that have kept me pretty busy. And it really wasn't until today, when I had some free time after lunch, that I could sit down and get this out. I'll try to get through this as much as I can. Before that, however, I just want to mention a couple of things in response to comments from my last post. I'll try to be brief. Firstly, I don't know much of what's going on with Andrew and his divorce, other than, to my knowledge, he's still divorcing her. Obviously no papers or anything, but the intention is clear. In addition to that, I'm not really in the position to be advocating for any sort of course of action that Andrew should take, or offering him legal advice, or assisting him in doing anything to the other man, or tracking down the other man's wife, etc. Andrew is a grown freaking man, and he can do whatever he wants with the situation. In my position as his friend is just to support him and offer advice if he asks for it. Secondly, this isn't some sort of guerrilla marketing for an OnlyFans girl. If it was, I should have done it in the first post, which hit the front page of Reddit and was seen by over 3 million people. Also, given that this post got so popular on Reddit, it's not really a surprise that bimbo wife Sophia, another Redditor, happened to be following the story and saw her name. It could have easily been any other of the hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands of girls who use Reddit to post their pictures. And as a brief aside, speaking of Sophia, I have indeed talked to her. She was actually quite helpful in confirming something for me. And as a person, she seems quite nice. But guys, there's no romance plans here in the future. Sophia is married, evidently quite happily so, and for almost 2 decades. I think the handle bimbo wife Sophia should have given that away. And frankly, while her husband must be cool with it, she's way too much for a mere insurance guy like me to handle. Seriously. So, with all that out of the way, on to the update. Last time I wrote in, I ended up with me assuming that my brother had used my office computer to chat with Sophia, but it was too late, his time for me to contact him. I am one of those guys that, once a problem is put in front of him, I must be actively working on trying to solve it. This is great for my career choice, but in situations like this, all I was doing was driving myself insane. So I decided to take a deep breath, leave everything until later, and carry on with what I needed to do. First thing was attempting to contact every person from my side that I had invited to the wedding that I had not yet informed about its cancellation. As you may recall, I had already informed my parents and had them contact my relatives on the day I made up my mind but only myself and Jessica had the complete guest list, so I needed to do the rest myself. Out of respect for my friends, I decided to call instead of text. But this might have been a bad idea since every phone call typically resulted in a rather lengthy explanation of why I was canceling the wedding. I know I could have given some other excuse, but I wanted people to know that I wasn't being frivolous or just experiencing something insane like cold feet. It was important not just for my own reputation, but I think in order to show respect to the people who had agreed to come on that day to support myself and Jessica as a couple. Because of this, it wasn't until late into the evening when I finally managed to contact everyone, which meant it was now morning time in Australia. I knew what I needed to do, but I wanted to make sure that my ducks were all in a row, so I took a breather and made a sandwich in the kitchen. I noticed that Jessica wasn't home. I had no idea when she left and sat down to eat and think about what to do with my brother's situation. Let's call my brother Thomas for the sake of shortness here. Now, Thomas and I have always been pretty close despite him being 13 years older than me. He was this sort of quasi-parental figure in my life because by the time I became capable of having long-term memories, he was already well on his way to becoming an adult. He was always generous with his time, played with his little brother while other teenagers would probably have avoided such an activity like the plague and generally seemed very mature and wise to me growing up. Suffice it to say I respected him greatly. The idea that he had been sexting with a girl who wasn't his wife in my house was something that I was still coming to grips with, and I needed to decide what to do. Talking to him about it was obvious, but at this point, given how much of a shambles my relationship with Jessica was, I didn't know if I cared about having him confess just for the sake of clearing my name. Was there anything to salvage anyway? I needed to, for my own sake of propriety, at least yell at him about this and convince him to stop. However, I wasn't sure if I was going to rat him out or not to my sister-in-law. Let's call her Emily. All right, Thomas and Emily it is, guys. It all depended on what he told me and if I believed him or not. I finished my meal and logged into Facebook and video called Thomas. Now, Thomas works mostly from home as a remote office worker since his field is related to IT, and he's almost always available during the day, and today was no exception. It didn't even ring more than once or twice before he answered. We greeted each other, exchanged some pleasantries, and then I just sort of dove into it and asked him if he had been using my computer to sex chat women on the internet when he was visiting me. Thomas's face froze and he leaned over out of frame of the camera. He was obviously closing the office door. Yeah, I did. Why, he said to me. I swore under my breath and explained to Thomas how Jessica had thought that his flirting was me since he used my computer. I explained that I wasn't happy to take the hit for him, and I asked him point blank if Emily knew about this or not. He waffled for a few seconds, stumbling over his words, and then looked a bit sheepish and said that no, Emily didn't know, and he'd prefer if it was kept that way. He went on to explain that their relationship had been pretty rough since their youngest was born 4 years ago, mainly in the bedroom department. Thomas had always been a pretty private person, especially when it came to intimate details, or at least he had always been that way when talking to his much younger baby brother. However, this time he just let it all lay out. Things have been bad. He had been tired of getting rejected. Emily was always tired no matter what he did or how much he helped out around the house. Eventually, this led to problems on his side, some sort of performance anxiety on the few occasions where Emily would actually feel up for some bedroom fun, and things just got worse from there. Basically, he said, there's no amount of socks picked up, laundry folded, dishes washed, or time spent minding the children that would get me laid. It was just not happening. So I started to spend time in my office at night working. He even did the finger quotes when saying this. Evidently, his working at night turned into a pretty hardcore addiction to OnlyFans sites, which, given the relative privacy he had in his office for legitimate work, spiraled out of control pretty quickly. I asked him if he was still doing it, and he swore up and down that he wasn't. I thought I believed him when he said it. He seemed to be sincere, but I just had this niggling feeling in the back of my skull that something was off. Maybe it was because of all the deceit I had encountered recently, but I was doubting my own brother, who has really been a stand-up guy to me our entire lives together. I really hated being in this situation. Now the problem I faced was pretty complex here. First, I wanted to say, clear my name. Then I would have to get my brother to tell Jessica that it was him all along. However, if he did that, then there was no guarantee that Jessica wouldn't spitefully inform Emily. I personally thought it would be best if Emily knew, but at the same time I didn't know if I felt comfortable potentially dropping a nuke on my brother's marriage over something he not only said he stopped, but is in this sort of moral gray area for me. I didn't have an answer right away as to what to do, but I did urge him to tell his wife about this and to get into marriage counseling. He said that they had actually been going for the last 6 months, and while it was helpful, what had really helped him was getting a prescription for some generic Viagra. I actually did a spit take on that, neatly spraying my computer screen with water. He told me that they had been trying to make sure they have intimate time at least a couple of times a week, and the Viagra had cured him of his performance anxiety to the point where now they were both looking forward to spending time together after the kids went to bed. The general gist of this was something along the lines of, "Hey, this is actually going in the right direction now. Please don't screw this up for us." I really didn't want to be in this position, not just for the sake of Thomas and Emily, but for my 2 nieces as well. And if what Thomas was telling me was the truth, I could be tossing a firebomb into a relationship that was starting to mend. It was unpredictable what would happen, so yeah, it may disappoint some people, but at the same time, I felt that the best option I had was to wait and see. I was, after all, going to meet him in a couple of weeks in the flesh, and once I got him alone in a room and a few drinks into him, I was going to definitely get to the bottom of this. It seemed like the best course of action. Anyway, that night I went to bed early. I didn't see Jessica until the next morning. She looked haggard, like she had a distinct lack of sleep. I asked her where she had been, mostly out of habit. After all, we had been together for almost 6 years. She told me that she had gone down to the courthouse for Lauren's arraignment to post bail. The courts here close at 1 p.m. on the weekends, which is why she had disappeared soon after I went into my office, and that afterwards she had driven her to her parents' house and spent the night. She made a point of telling me how horrible it was to have to explain to her parents that I had called off the wedding. I asked her if her parents knew the reason why, and she barked, "Of course they do." I tried to remain calm, but by this point in this ordeal, I was losing it. I bit back at her. "Are you going to move back there so that they have both girls at home now?" It was childish and petty, but the fact that she bailed Lauren out of jail annoyed me to no end. "You don't need to be a butt about this," she said, to which I said, "And you don't need to be Lauren's effing underling." I could see Jessica visibly flinch when I said that to her. It obviously had struck a chord, and the corners of her eyes started to tear up, and I cooled my temper. We just sort of stood there, miles apart in the living room of our own house, and didn't say anything for a good solid minute or two until Jessica decided to continue talking. "Our parents are going to be here at 3. I actually facepalmed at this. I was about to go off on her for not consulting me on this, but decided that was just my own ego. After all, I did need to sit down with them and work out the details around the wedding and whatever remaining deposit we had, and I, at least for once, face-to-face explained to everyone why it wasn't happening. So fine, let's do this and get it out of the way. I tried to make myself busy, but there isn't much you can do on a Sunday except waste time, and time wasting isn't very enjoyable when you know you are heading into the meat grinder in just a few hours. Still, 3 p.m. came and so did our parents. We all sat down at the large kitchen table that Jessica had bought just a month after we closed on the house. It was secondhand from Facebook Davidette Place, but she loved it because it was solid oak with a beautiful finish and capable of seating 8, and just as heavy as that sounds. She always wanted to have big dinner parties with her families over, just not like this. The next 3 hours were grueling. No one was happy, nor should they be, I guess. The best support I could get came unsurprisingly from my own parents, but even that was tempered. Essentially along the lines of, well, it's his decision to make, which more or less means, yeah, we think this is crazy too, but we're still backing him. Honestly, that was fine with me. I didn't need my parents to get the stigma by association of canceling the wedding. I was fine owning that. Eventually, we worked out a decent deal in regards to the wedding. We would try to get back whatever money we could, split it back however it was contributed. Some things like the honeymoon were all paid by me, or the flowers were all paid for by Jessica's parents, and then eat whatever losses there were communally. However, when it came to the subject of the house, Jessica vehemently objected to my idea of paying back her or her parents for the deposit. Basically, she didn't intend to move. Now, as you can imagine, Jessica and I hadn't really talked about the US or us living together situation in too much detail. The fact that I even brought up settling the house equity seemed to shock her, because the implication here is that I expect her to move out of our home. She threw a fit, and I don't blame her. I should have settled our relationship status with her first before trying to negotiate a payment plan with her parents. It really tipped my hand to everyone about how I was feeling about our relationship. And while I think even our parents expected it, or at least understood, Jessica was beside herself. She was absolutely not accepting of us breaking up over this, and she made it clear. "I am not moving out of my house, and we are not breaking up," she declared. And that's pretty much how my Sunday night ended. After our parents left, Jessica and I tried to talk it out some more, but we kept running in circles around each other, and I had to curb my natural inclination to run her down until we got a resolution. Truthfully, I was pretty dang tired as well, and I just wanted to turn off my brain. Believe it or not, we just ended up sitting on the couch and watching a movie together in silence until it was time to go to sleep. We left it there with talk about it more tomorrow, and retreated to our separate rooms. On Monday, I woke up to a large handwritten letter slid under the door from Jessica. I took a brief look at the first few pages and decided I would deal with it later and went to work. When I left, Jessica was still in bed. She must have been up late writing that letter. At the office, I rescheduled some meetings and started calling venues and vendors that were on my list. The other ones were being handled by Jessica or her parents. It was a mixed bag of results. The catering people were adamant that I pay most of their fees under the pretense that they had ordered most of the food. I shot back at them over this, like were they expecting me to eat a week-old steak? But my appeal fell on deaf ears. I tried talking to the woman who ran the catering business and explaining what happened, but that seemed to only firm up her resolve to get as much money as possible out of me. Inversely, the DJ that I had hired for their entertainment was incredibly kind and gave us back almost all of the money. It wasn't much, however. Things went on like this, and during the day, between making calls and doing work, I read Jessica's letter. Now, this is 20 pages of written word, so I'm just going to summarize. The gist of it was that ever since childhood, Jessica had been bullied by Lauren, and in such response, Jessica's way of dealing with this was to essentially go along with whatever Lauren wants or wants to hear. She went on to say that it had become sort of a general way of operating in her life, that she was just afraid to rock the boat, to cause a problem, or sometimes even to voice an opinion. I reflected on this because, truthfully, when I look back at our relationship with a more critical eye, I kind of think that Jessica was a bit too perfect of a girlfriend. What I mean by that is she never disagreed with me, never picked her plans over mine, or even really advocated too strongly against anything I wanted to do. She went out of her way to make herself appear useful and all around acted more or less like a yes woman in our relationship. I mean, we had never even so much as had a minor disagreement in 6 years, let alone a full-blown argument until now. It sounds great from a relationship standpoint until, of course, it's not. I couldn't shake this feeling that Jessica had this deep-seated insecurity and needed to make people happy. You know what they call people-pleasing behavior? When I start looking at it this way, a lot of things make sense to me, and I start to realize that despite being with Jessica for 6 years, I don't actually know her that well. It's like she puts up this image around her, which is really just a mirror, a reflection of whatever she thinks people want to see. And in this case of our relationship, she's more or less been acting my role of the pervert girlfriend, whenever really letting me inside to see who she is as a person. Hell, I can even say that what I saw in those text messages is the real Jessica, because it's almost certainly just another reflection, this time of Lauren and all her warts and faults. This may sound weird, but it's like we are in this unequal relationship. Whereas maybe she loves me for who I am and how I wear my thoughts on my face and my heart on my sleeve, but maybe I only love her for the mirror she's holding up to my face. I don't know if this sounds too metaphysical for you, then I'm right there as well. It's like this wisp of an idea that I'm still trying to catch by my fingertips. All I know is that in the last few days, I probably learned more about Jessica than I had in the last 6 years, and the letter she wrote me was the first real view into her childhood that I had glimpsed. That night, we talked more about this specifically, about her childhood, about her behavior. The conclusion that we came to is that she needs help. She's a grown woman who is sadly stuck acting like a child, too scared to displease anyone, lest she face her sister's wrath or her parents' disapproval, or the loss of love from the ones she loves. This is no way to have a relationship, and I can say that. I feel much more confident and assured that my decision to call off the wedding was the correct one. In fact, it could not be any more correct. That night after our talk, I went to bed with much less angst than I had in a few days. Trust is a fragile thread. Once broken, it's almost impossible to mend completely. This story isn't just about betrayal. It's a lesson about the importance of honesty and trust in any relationship. Sometimes we must make heartbreaking decisions to shield ourselves from even greater pain down the road. Accepting that those we trust the most can let us down is never easy, but what truly matters is how we choose to face it. The protagonist chose to uphold his values and pave the way for a fresh start, demonstrating that letting go can sometimes be the most profound act of self-love. If you found this wine story compelling or learned something valuable, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next video. Thank you for joining us today. See you next time.